And the next stop on the Purdue Redemption Tour is the Final Four.
More in motion, they get it to him. More in space, close to speed. A touchdown for Purdue. He's still going.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wash Boilers. In this episode, we're going to be going over a little bit of our reactions to the NBA draft lottery. Then we're going to be looking at Braden Smith, TKR, Fletcher Lawyer, how they've been performing at the G League Combine as well as the NBA Draft Combine. And then we're going to go over a couple more thoughts, maybe look at the initial Big Ten schedule home and away for Purdue Basketball this year that they released earlier this week. But starting with the NBA Draft lottery results. So for a little background here, Justin is a Indiana Pacers fan. I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. So Sunday was definitely a high for one of us and maybe a low for one of us. So with that, I'm gonna pass it off to Justin and let him get into maybe some of the Pacers side of things.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the sadder parts of being of the lottery is that with the Pacers results for it. I mean, to round out the top four, it's the Wizards, Jazz, Grizzlies, Bulls, right? I think in that order. I mean, so pretty like good lineup. And so I think it kind of goes into what I want to say with my thoughts of it in general. The first thing you hear every Pacers fan say is it was rigged against us. Adam Silver has it out for us. Adam Silver's trying to get us for tanking the whole season. The Wizards had 83 points scored against them by Bam Adebayo because they don't try that hard. I'm going to say if it was ever rigged, it was not to help the Wizards at this point in time. I don't think the Pacers got screwed like that. It does suck, though. It genuinely does suck. I mean, you know, especially like because of the feeling I'm sure you had as a Bulls fan moving up to the top four in such a big draft that you've heard of for the last year total at this point to basically move out of it and not even have a pick now after having a season that was just so tanking and not trying at all and being like, all right, well, end of the season will pay off. It's just so disappointing. I mean, it was a gamble, and I think anybody who is a Pacers fan should see what our GM tweeted about how he apologized to the fans, genuinely just like thought it was going to go our way. It was really cool to see. It does suck. I mean, it's one of those things where if it worked out, it would be the defining moment of our franchise. We would have one of our highest picks ever. I think the last time we had a top 2 pick was Rick Smits in like the 70s or something. He's the all-time Pacers legend. So it just didn't work out. I think Zubac is going to be a really good guy. I mean, I don't know if you have any opinions on like as a non-Pacers fan how it feels, because I'm probably hyping up Zubac now because I have to, or else, you know, the whole thing sucks. But it sucks. It's not good. There's no way to frame it in a good way.
I mean, yeah, like as a neutral, when the trade happened, I don't know how I felt. To be honest, you know, I mean, the Pacers did what they were supposed to do. I think you guys had the best odds for the third pick, maybe. So
Second pick, yeah.
Second pick, yeah. So I mean, you guys were as bad as you could have been. I think I saw a stat. You guys lost like 21 out of 25 down the stretch or something like that.
Yeah.
And the Wizards, you know, they ended up going.
They somehow did it.
They might have gone 24 out of
25
25 down the stretch. Like it was insane levels of tanking. But to your point about the kind of, you know, is it rigged against us? Is it anything like that? Your point about the Wizards is very true. They traded for Anthony Davis and Trey Young, and then just didn't play them. And you know, you could say, they were injured or whatnot. No one's buying that. Absolutely no one is buying that. But on the same token, the Pacers were fined for tanking this year. But
True.
I don't think that Indianapolis, let's say like in the Wizards, instead of the Wizards, it was the Lakers. And the Lakers did all of the egregious tanking stuff, and they still got the number 1 pick, while the Pacers were fined and they got screwed. In that instance, I think you could see an argument where it's Los Angeles versus Indianapolis. I don't think Adam Silver really cares about Washington, D.C. and the D.C. area sports market so much to give them a draft. And I think if he did give them any draft, it would have been one like 2024 where the Hawks got the first pick and there really wasn't a generational guy coming out of it. And it's like, oh, it's Ricochet. And I think the Wizards ended up number 2 with Alex Sarr, but neither of them were supposed to be anything crazy. And obviously the best player in that draft was Zach Edey. No one knew it yet. But that's where I think if you were going to make that argument, it was there. I think with kind of
Yeah.
circling back to the Zubac trade, it's a gamble, and if it worked out and you guys were sitting at number 1 right now and adding AJ DeBonsa, that'd be awesome. I think
Yeah, it would have
maybe
been amazing.
I'm too casual an NBA fan to really appreciate Zubac, I guess. I never really thought of him as that kind of player you'd trade what it ended up being a top 5 pick for. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's
It's
interesting
it's
though.
the risk of giving up a pick that could be, any of those in that range, because you wouldn't inherently trade the top 5 pick for Zubac. You probably or give the rest of what we needed. We gave Bennett Mathurin top 5 pick and an unprotected pick like in 2029, which is going to end up being like, if we're not good that year, this trade's going to look even worse. So it's always a gamble. I mean, I think I'm glad that we have a front office that's at least trying to do stuff. I mean, you have so much of an issue with other teams, like, I don't know, the Nets or like any team that they got screwed too, that felt believing below us, where they're actually bad. They don't have a future. I'm fine as a Pacers fan. I feel like we could win the title next year, and it wouldn't be a shock to a lot of people, which I don't think you could say about any of the other maybe top 10 teams in the lottery. So moving on, though, I wanted to get to your reaction for the Bulls. I feel like it's probably the best thing to happen to the Bulls in like how many years? I mean, and so it's Derrick Rose towards ACLs. It's the best thing to happen.
Yeah, probably. I mean, so they moved up in 2020. And, if and also that's an example of where we don't know how this is going to end up, even though the Bulls were luckier on Sunday. In 2020, we moved up to number 4 and we ended up taking Patrick Williams, who is still somehow on the team, but a huge draft bust. And I think who you guys took that year, at pick 11 or wherever you got Halliburton. So that was, you never know how these things are going to end up working out. But I guess from the Bulls' perspective, yeah, I think this class is probably looked at as a little bit more top heavy and loaded than that 2020 class, and especially with just how weird scouting was because we didn't get to see those players in the tournament. There wasn't really in-person stuff that year, so a lot of it,
For
you end
sure.
up with James Wiseman going number 2 to the Warriors, and he's probably one of the largest draft busts of all time, and
Yeah.
ended up working out, and LaMelo ended up working out. But then you get to Patrick Williams, and Maxey doesn't go until maybe pick 20. So that class was super weird overall.
Super weird.
But I'd have to say, given those parameters, this is probably the best it's been for Bulls fans in a while. And I mean, it really started with the Trailblazers winning their play-in game and then getting us pick 15 as the first pick out
That's
of the
crazy,
lottery.
actually.
The fact that draft pick finally conveyed, I feel like you look at the start of the season and they traded for Drew Holiday and, they had some good pieces, but I don't think anyone would think that the Trailblazers were going to make the playoffs. So the fact that they were able to do that, and then the fact that we were able to fire AK and Billy
That's what I
Donovan
was
ended
gonna
up
say.
stepping down on his own. Yeah, it's been, this is why I'm nervous. It's been a really good string of a couple of months of
Yes.
luck for the Bulls. And now we're looking at a situation where it's realistically either going to be Caleb Wilson or Cam Boozer. And to be honest with you, I am perfectly happy with both. I have seen
I
a
think you
lot
should
of the
be.
hype. Yeah, I've seen a lot of the hype around Caleb Wilson, especially in terms of people calling him Kevin Garnett. Could he go number 2? I listen. I don't know who his media team is, but they need a
Yeah.
raise. I mean, I still think he's good, but like, wow, this was a 3-guy draft until maybe about a week ago, and now Caleb Wilson is Kevin Garnett, I guess.
I also feel like that
Cam,
came out
yeah,
of nowhere. Not to like interrupt you or anything, but that has been like such a weird, like, I can't tell if it's the Ringer stuff that, is just pushing that stuff out heavily, or if his agents are just like everywhere. But I feel like the Caleb Wilson stuff is just like out of nowhere. I mean, he didn't play like the second half of the season in college. I don't even
I
remember.
think he broke his hand or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an injury where I'm like not concerned. See, I've already talked
Yeah. No,
myself
it's not
into it.
like
I'm like,
a.
yeah, I was looking at it again. I was like, yeah. But
It's
yeah,
fine.
no, I
Yeah.
mean Cam Boozer. I think people just got bored.
I
Cam
agree.
Boozer was. We've known about him for a long time. I think coming into the year, he was supposed to be that number 1 guy. Darren Peterson, we've known about for a while, and I feel like every talking point about him got exhausted in like February when he was having his issues with. Now we know, I guess it was creatine, maybe,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
Kansas's
Whatever.
struggles. Debanza is just good. I feel like in terms of
Yeah.
just like a personality, he doesn't add much like controversy or anything, so people get bored there. So maybe that's where this is coming from. But either way, I'm totally happy for
It's a
whoever the
great
Bulls
day.
end up picking. And when they get up there and they read off that they draft Acuff or Wagler or something like that, and everything falls apart again, I'm gonna remember how I feel right now when I still had hope. So yeah, it's
Don't
looking
you mean
up.
when they
So
draft
for both of our
TKR
teams,
with the
it's
fourth
looking
pick
up.
because of his performance? Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
When
number
they draft
4.
TKR
Yeah,
for at
well,
4, yeah, it'll be great.
yeah, well, and the Grizzlies will take Braden Smith at 3, and it'll be, oh, it's numbers, and then Fletcher goes number 2. I don't know, but yeah. So either way, I think it is looking up for both of our teams. I know it did not go well for the Pacers on Sunday, but replacing essentially last year's team plus any of the scraps you can pick up this offseason to kind of fill out the rest of the roster, Zubac is going to be better than Miles Turner.
Yes.
Halliburton, motivated. He has the good NBA karma on his side now after the Achilles tear, and
These are
everybody else on your
shingles.
team. And yeah, oh God, yeah, that seems like that's screwing him up more than the Achilles at this point.
I just need him to come back healthy. If I could have the trade be we get Zubac and Halliburton be fully healthy, but we don't get the 5th pick, I would actually take that. I'm fine with that trade.
Cool. Well, I think now we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to head into kind of recapping how Braden, TKR, and Fletcher have performed at their respective draft combines, and maybe take a look at what are some teams in the NBA right now that could be the best fits for at least Braden and TKR. So we will see you guys then.
Okay, so we want to get into some dream Purdue player fits for the NBA. Recently, the Purdue guys have been kind of showing out at some of the combine stuff this last week. Braden has been doing some drills, and TKR has been being talked about a lot recently. He was asked to come back after performing at the G League combine. He got asked to go up to the NBA combine. So there's been a lot of talk about that. I don't know if there's anything like stood out to you specifically, Ike. Like for me, something that stood out to me was that we've seen a lot more threes from TKR, which is interesting point in itself that we could talk about Matt Painter's system, but it's showing that I've kind of always felt like he had a really good game around the rim. I mean, you always see how good he is with those like 6, 8, 10 feet shots out. It kind of makes sense to me he could translate that to the NBA. I don't know if you have any thoughts like that too.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of what this kind of combine testing has done, especially with the fact that, they're taking Braden's vertical jump and it's 38.5, and they're saying he's performing very well. Like you mentioned, the TKR threes. Apparently in the G League 1, Fletcher is finding spots very well. It's all stuff that we just knew from like watching it. I mean, you go to Mackey and you watch the team rebound in warmups, and you see Braden go up for a rebound. It's like, he
I
can
think
get
about
up. Like,
yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, like, so I feel like it's all stuff now, just with kind of the science behind it, with like the measurements and whatnot. It's kind of confirming that what was purely anecdotal, now it has a little bit more weight to it. But yeah, I think, that with Fletcher doing good and then TKR kind of hitting threes, I'm not sure how much that's going to keep on going, but it is definitely interesting to see that is something that he can do, at least in these practices. And I think it could lend well to if he was trying to find a role in the NBA somewhere, kind of going into that.
Yeah, it's this, not to go on a tangent here, but it gets me back to that thing we talked about. I think it was like the first episode about how people act like Purdue is like this unathletic group of slobs. And I'm like, dude, Braden Smith has a almost 39-inch vert. And we're acting as if we're some like JV guys who just got picked off in like of some Indiana high school. Like, we need to change that narrative. We need to start changing that now. Because I'm starting, we have guys coming in who are even more athletic than the guys we have now. But you hear people talk about Purdue before the tournament when we go to play Arizona. And it was like, they just got some guys from random town in Indiana to come play in the game.
Yeah, no, well, it's what were we, like the suburban AAU team from
Like, what are we
Mark
talking about?
Titus and all them? Like, yeah, like I think I agree with you. I love the term
Yeah.
unathletic group of slobs. I don't think I've ever heard them described as that before, but I'm gonna take that. I think with that is just maybe our thing is more probably size than it is like actual athleticism.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we did learn for real finally is that Purdue may have been lying a little bit about Braden Smith's official height. So keep in mind this is
And
barefoot. So in shoes he may be this height, but
yeah.
Braden was measured at about 5'10" and a quarter, a little bit less than the 6 feet tall that people are
Come
saying. But
on, give us some
again,
credit. Yeah.
yeah, hey, I don't know. I don't know. See, listen, he was the best player and best point guard in the country, so really didn't affect anything there. So,
Yes,
yeah, I
exactly.
mean, stuff like that. Maybe it's the size, but yeah, acting like Purdue isn't athletic enough is probably it's a moot point now that's going to come up again at the end of next season when we run into a team that is built similarly to Arizona or Michigan like this last year. And we're going to completely forget this conversation ever happened. And yeah, I'll probably be on the side of saying, like, man, we need to get some more athletes. And then we'll have two guys go in the NBA draft. So
Yeah.
I do understand, where it's probably, so I'll try to remember that for next season.
It's kind of a thing on Matt Parent's system, I think, a little bit, and that's something that I still like. We could have a whole 5-hour long podcast about is Matt Painter's system and how it probably doesn't help guys, show their full athleticism sometimes, and it works. I don't care, it works. So, but now that they're going to be transitioning to the NBA, I mean, hopefully, it seems pretty much like a lock that I think Braden is going to get drafted. I think TKR is kind of showing that he's going to get a chance at least. So because of that, we kind of wanted to do some Purdue player fits in the NBA, or dream places for them. I kind of want to start with. Is there anybody you'd want to start with? I feel like Braden would be a good one, just to he's our main guy, get him out of the way. I don't know if there's a team that you have on top of your head that you thought was the main fit for him.
So I have a few, and I can run through them pretty quickly. So first, I have the Boston Celtics. So the most likely pick where they would probably take him would be 40th overall, so 10th pick in the second round. ESPN's latest mock draft has him projected there, so I'm kind of stealing that one a little bit. It seems like they see that fit too.
Yeah.
Kind of a theme that's going to be with a lot of the teams that I choose, along with TKR's teams as well, is they're all teams with a strong kind of player development culture. I mean, we know these guys are good, but at the end of the day, to succeed in the NBA, they are going to have to get better. They're not blue chip prospects going into the draft. They're not first rounders, most likely. So I do think that a team with a strong player development staff and track record of success is going to do both of them very well. So kind of more on the Celtics. So they have a history actually of taking pretty players with later picks. So in 2011, they took Juwan Johnson 27th and Etuan Moore 55th overall in the same draft. So they've done this before. They took Carson Edwards in 2019. They traded for that pick, but it was immediately on draft night. So I think the Celtics could be a good one. Another one I was thinking of is the Detroit Pistons. So this one I think is a little unlikely because for my most likely pick, I had 21st overall, which is in the first round. I just don't think that's going to happen. But maybe if Braden for some reason goes undrafted, I could see this as a good fit for him. Braden's obviously going to be undersized in the NBA. I think the Pistons have a lot of really lengthy defenders that could kind of try to cover up for him when he was on the court. One thing is Duncan Robinson is almost kind of like the Charizard to Fletcher Lawyer's Charmander a little bit, if you want to try to make that comparison there. Maybe there's a little bit larger of a gap, but I could see him developing a similar chemistry with a three-point sharpshooter like that. And then I think the Pistons really just need a backup playmaker to Cade Cunningham. Cade leads the playoffs in turnovers, really, because he's the only guy who can handle the ball on that team. So those are my first two. I have a couple more, but I'll pass it back to you just to kind of see where you stand on it.
Yeah, I think that's good because I feel like I want to talk about before we even get through all of them too, how he would excel in the NBA. What's his ideal kind of transition? You hear people always compare TJ McConnell, and it's the weakest thing ever because they play nothing like each other. They're completely different types of players. Most likely, Braden Smith is more like a CP3, where he's very, very assist heavy, gets the ball moving. He can score if he needs to, and that's kind of what CP3 was like. That's why he was so good at being both of those. Braden's probably more of a assist first player, but that's kind of what is interesting to me because the NBA has kind of moved away from that archetype. I mean, you literally saw on opening night this year, the Rockets and Spurs, I think. Rockets started, I think, 5 guys who were all over 6'6". They didn't have really a pass first point guard. So I think that I don't know if you have anything to add on to this because that kind of makes it harder for me to imagine Braden Smith working on some teams. there are still a ton of teams that still use tempo and push the ball and also distribute. Like the Pacers are a good example. The hard part is Halliburton's like 6'6", and so it makes it easier when your point guard is really tall for them to also guard other guys or not get as much of a downside when they go in when they're starting point guard. I don't know. Do you have any ideas on like how Braden Smith would work best on a team? I guess.
I don't think Braden is a starter in the NBA. I think he's a backup playmaker that you can bring in off the bench that you can trust with handling the ball and who can shoot good enough from three, maybe drive a little bit. But just given, and it's to no fault of his own, he's just undersized.
Yeah,
And maybe hopefully this ends up on a compilation somewhere and he's proven the doubters and he's starting for a really good team. I just think that Braden can have a super successful NBA career, but I think it's going to be in a reserve role coming off the bench. Because even like you mentioned with the Rockets, so the reason I think that they started all those guys was because Van Vliet tore his ACL early in the offseason, so they didn't have a point guard, and that kind of became a thing when they were trying to make Reed Shepherd work at that spot and say, like, hey, like, go be our point guard that we drafted you to be. It really didn't turn out well, and they didn't take anyone at the deadline. They've been kind of criticized for that. So I think Braden on a team like that, even maybe he does start for that team, but at the very least he can come off the bench and run a pick and roll. He can dribble, he has skills like that, where a lot of these like lengthy defenders, you look at the Thompson twins, the ones on Houston and Detroit, a lot of the talk about them is, they can't shoot, they're super athletic and they're lengthy, but that's pretty much all they provide, and they're pretty much strictly defenders and can, catch lobs and things like that. I think Braden's ball handling abilities, the way he sees the court, that's going to be useful no matter what team he's on. It's just some of the physical limitations might lead that to be in a smaller role, as opposed to, you look at like a Chris Paul, and I love that comparison because I think Braden's maybe peak in the NBA could be San Antonio Chris Paul, which is 40-year-old Chris Paul, which sounds bad, but he started all 82 games. He was super critical for Wemby, and I don't know. I think that could be a really beneficial spot for him. But Chris Paul, like on his Hornets days, was a crazy athlete, and then he got hurt a lot. But I think that's kind of where Braden fits in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think you kind of hit on everything I would want for the counterpoint to what I was saying, where it's like there's all these things that can go against him, but this is why it could work. And I think there's so many examples of why it can't work. In a team like the Rockets, where they don't even have a guy like him there, so it might not work. Why can't they use a guy? Why can't he be the perfect solution to the problem they have? I think it's perfect. You took my Boston one. I think Boston's such a good one just because they're known for guards. I think one thing for Braden as well is he would just do great with shooters. Honestly, that was a huge problem with Purdue is we just never had guys that could shoot besides Fletcher Lawyer, and then you had some kind of inconsistent guys with the three-point. So I feel like a team like Boston would be great for him just to pass it out, to keep getting those open threes. And that's all they want as a team. They would shoot 100 threes a night if they could. Another team that I thought would be great for him then with that, to an extent, it kind of running back a little bit of Purdue stuff, is the Grizzlies. I just think he'd be great. You get him back with Edey. We already know it works. Let's just see it. Let's just see it again. Can it work in the NBA? I don't see why not. I think they also have a good defensive presence. They're going to have another top pick in this draft with either Caleb Wilson or Boozer, and both those guys are going to be great for them. And so if you have that defensive presence, you can kind of cover up for a lot of his flaws. But mainly it's the Edey thing. I just want to see him with Edey one more time.
Yeah, if the Grizzlies end up going Cam Boozer at 3, their lineup could almost be like a supercharged version of 23-24 Purdue, because you have obviously Zach Edey and Braden Smith in that same spot. You fill out the rest of their roster with whoever's going to be that 2 and the 3. But if Cam Boozer can just be kind of a supercharged sophomore year TKR, that's a pretty fun team, and I think Braden can definitely have a role on that team and be a positive contributor.
Yeah, I definitely see that vision with it as well. All right, I didn't know if you had another example that you had for any of the Braden Smith teams.
I did. I had 2 more. My first one is the Knicks. So most likely would be 31st overall and 50. Did you have them too?
No, I'm getting mad at these Celtics.
Oh,
and
yeah, because you don't
really
like
not
New York. I forgot. So I had that 31st overall. They also have 55th overall. So That's where Bronny was drafted 2 years ago. So that could be another spot there. So the reason why I kind of like New York is almost more so culturally than I do, basketball fit. They also do have like lengthy defenders and things like that to
Yeah.
cover up
They have
for
a short guy
maybe
as
some
their
of.
main dude anyways. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, that's kind of where I was going. So Jalen Brunson, if Braden could learn from him, Braden's probably not the scorer that Brunson is, but Brunson, again, is another smaller guard who excelled in college for multiple years. He himself was taken in the second round. They're probably, if there's a washed Wildcats of Villanova fans out there, and they made a podcast about Jalen going into the NBA, they would not have probably predicted this for him. But really, all of those Villanova guys were multi-year college people. Mikal Bridges was there for a
Yeah,
while.
the
Josh Hart
Villanova
was there
Knicks,
for
what
a
they're trying to
while.
get.
Yeah, exactly. Even DiVincenzo, and like you mentioned, when he was still there for the 2 months that team was together. But yeah, I think the Knicks could be a really good one. And then my last one, this is actually my favorite one, is just the Spurs. Just because, kind of like we
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, I think old Chris Paul is his best comparison. I think that's a level he can really get to. And then they have the 42nd and 44th pick in the draft. So I feel like that's prime where he's projected to go, right around that 40 to 45 range. He's had plenty of experience with guys who are 7'4", so I think he'd fit right in with Wemby. He'd know where to throw all those lobs. And yeah, I think that they also have a lot of really lengthy defenders to maybe make up for some of those weak spots. I feel like I've said that for every team, but the
That's what
Spurs
you
are
need,
probably
though.
my
I mean,
favorite
that
fit for
is
him.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's then you're one step away from your dream where we have Braden Smith, Edie as a center, or Wimby as a center, and then you get Edie somehow in the future. Spurs need to get him. You can have your Twin Towers going.
If we need to do a 2024 redraft where we're also allowed to undo the trades that they make, because we were so close to just put the 274 guys in the NBA together. I don't care
Yeah.
if it doesn't work on paper. It will probably work in some way, in some matchup. That would have been
And
amazing.
so at
I
some
gotta
point we have
stop
to
because it's just
forget. We can go down the whole path of it. I'll be quick. At some point we have to forget that Wimby is 7'4" because he plays like a guy who's like 6'1" half the time.
he
He
could
can
play the
dribble the ball off the
4.
court. Who
Just
cares?
put Edie at the
Yeah.
5. Yeah. No.
He's the perfect guy to
I don't
cover
know.
up for. Yeah, we could get into it for days. All right, but getting into a 4 kind of player, and I actually have some interesting thoughts with Wimby and this guy to an extent too, is TKR. And so the first thing I want to do before we get into the team fits is, what do you think is how does he thrive in the NBA? Obviously, I kind of never thought of him as an NBA guy. I guess I just never thought of the 3-point thing. I kind of thought he was a little. It's weird because he played this weird position in college. Like junior year, he was playing as a center, which he clearly can't be in the NBA. He's not tall enough or he's not big enough to do that. But then he also, I mean, this year played as a power forward with Clough. And I mean, that's kind of the ideal way for him to play. If he was a 4 with a guy who could be a really good rim protector for him, I think that's kind of ideally where he goes. I don't know if you have I have an idea of how he'd work or a counterpoint to that.
I agree. I mean, all of the teams that I have listed for him either have a really good playmaker or they have a really good center who, like you mentioned, could kind of play that supercharged Clough role and cover up for maybe some of his deficiencies down low. But yeah, I think, again, like you mentioned, he can't be your starting 5. He's just too
Yeah, no.
small. But we were talking about this earlier, and we won't go too far because we'll probably do a segment maybe in a later episode on player comparisons. But I think maybe a role like Naz Reid on the Timberwolves, where he's the sixth man, he doesn't start, he comes off the bench, but he plays pretty critical minutes for them. And there's been a lot of talk, even in this series against San Antonio, where going small and having Naz Reid, who's also 6'9", at the 5, has been a better matchup for them against what San Antonio is doing defensively. So I think he could maybe fit in that kind of role, just being a backup big, where I saw one video put out by Sleepers Media earlier this week where some of the reports they were saying was like, TKR is just too productive to not be in the NBA. And it's like, you don't understand like how he scores, you don't understand how he gets all of his numbers, but he gets them, and it's a way
Yeah.
that works for him, and it worked at a high level in college. And obviously the NBA is a whole nother beast, but could see it maybe just working there, and he just figures it out.
I think it's a great point. I mean, he scores, and it's like he's not scoring off these ways that I feel like a lot you'll see. Like he's not a free throw guy. He's getting his buckets. He has a really, really good touch. That's the kind of like the thing I want to focus on or highlight with him is that he has such a good feel around the mid range and like he has that floater that you know is going in about 99% of the time. I mean, that's something where I feel like he can develop that into a 3-point shot, especially if he ever got to that Naj Reid level where maybe he's not as ever good a shooter as Naj Reid is, but he could still play a position like that. And that's kind of where I wanted to highlight with some of my teams. So both of mine are very center focused, where I think the Spurs are a very interesting place for him to go. Currently, they don't really start a traditional 4. They kind of have 3 guards basically, and then I think it's either Vassell or I can't remember their 4th guy is like 6'8" maybe. And so TKR, I don't know if he'd start for them, but he could slide in. I think him and Wemby would be a really interesting one. You basically have Wemby making up for any of his maybe rim protection that kind of Cleft did, but he's also stretching the floor with Wemby. It'd be really interesting to see like how that would work in the post. I feel like both of them could score. It'd be a really interesting way to go with that. And I'll do my last one and I'll let you go and comment on it. But Sixers, I feel like would be a really interesting one as well. This hinges on Embiid being healthy. But I kind of think of Embiid as this guy who can stretch the floor because he can shoot threes and he's really good at that. He also has this really good post game too. If you were to have Embiid and TKR both being able to hit from mid range and 3 and in the post, I mean, that's like a really good 4-5 combo. And TKR is kind of a guy that doesn't really exist a ton in the NBA because of usually when you get 4s, they're kind of lankier, but he's like a bigger forward that's not a center, but he also can play for it. He's a really interesting player.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like those fits a lot. I like that and I kind of do this as well. We kind of basically just try to recreate like 23, 24 Purdue, put them
Yeah,
with an
it worked.
all-time center. Exactly. Hey, probably against any other national champion besides that one UConn team, which is a nightmare matchup.
Yeah.
That team is probably remembered a lot differently, but no, I agree. I like those fits a lot. I do. I think I actually didn't even think about the 76ers one, but I do think with like a guy like Embiid, that could really fit well. I guess my first good fit that I thought for him was the Los Angeles Lakers. So they actually don't have a second round pick. I actually think they don't have a second round pick for the rest of the decade. And I'm not even saying that in
That's
a jokingly
crazy.
way. I don't think they have one until 2030. But the most likely way for him to get there would, of course, be an undrafted free agent. But the reason I kind of like it is he would play with a top playmaker in the league in Luka. So I think, trying to get him to his spots, have another really good point guard to kind of go off of. And then the Lakers, when you look at it, kind of going back to that player development piece, guys like Kyle Kuzma, Josh Hart, who we mentioned, Caruso, Reeves, Bronny had playoff minutes against Houston. A lot of these late round guys and undrafted free agents that they take, it seems like they know what they're doing. So I think TKR, if he went there, that could be a really good fit for him to kind of try to realize his NBA potential. And then besides that, I'll go down to my favorite. So Miami, I think would be really interesting for him. And they're kind of the gold standard for player
Yes.
development. And that's where, I just say you put him in Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra's system and their program and how they do stuff down there. I think he'd flourish. I think you look at Heat culture and everything they've built, depending on how valid all of that is. I think that'd be a super beneficial thing for him to be a part of, and I think he'd fit it very well. You look at their team, and I pulled this team just as an example of how we're talking about Braden and TKR for mostly TKR's sake, but even Braden, it's like these guys could be undrafted. Do we think these guys are going to be able to make the league? That 2023 Heat team, who went to the finals as an 8 seed, some of their key contributors, Gabe Vincent in the finals, 4th in minutes, undrafted. Caleb Martin, 5th in minutes in the finals, undrafted. They were actually tied for 4th and 5th. Max Strus, 6th in minutes in the finals, undrafted. Duncan Robinson, 7th, undrafted.
Wow.
And even their veterans on that team. Jimmy Butler was taken 30th overall, obviously by the Bulls. Kyle Lowry, 24th overall. Those guys came there later. They were developed by other teams. But still, it kind of fit that culture. So I think that TKR, if he was able to get there, it would really maybe be the best destination spot for him to make the most out of his abilities. And then you're talking about rim defending centers. you can't get much better than Bam Adebayo at that. And if Bam can continue to drop 83 points a game, that'll be an even larger plus there. So I
And then
like
maybe
them a lot
TKR could get him to
as a
84.
pick. Oh yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great. I think the undrafted aspect and like the developing is a really good point. Like the Lakers are in Miami are two like I think great examples for that. I didn't even think about the fact of like the amount of guys that they had on that Miami team that were undrafted. Especially, I think Spoelstra is almost a great person to go to after a painter type. I mean, you're basically going from a super set system to a really really great culture and system that Spoelstra runs. So I think it's a great choice.
I have one more team that I scrolled down and I found. Do you mind if
Okay,
I go over them? Because I kind of like them as well. They're my
no, let's hear it.
co-favorite. So it's the Warriors. So they have the 54th overall pick in the second round. I think that you look at a guy like Steph Curry, who it's an overused term, his gravity on the 3-point line, I feel like would pull out so many defenders that TKR would have a lot of one-on-one opportunities inside. So defensively, it might be a wreck, but offensively, I feel like that would be his best place to excel. And then kind of semi-culturally, so TKR, especially this last season, said that he modeled a lot of his game off of Dennis Rodman and just kind of being the player who did the dirty work, got the rebounds, and all the things teams need to win. I think when you look at the Warriors, they probably have the guy who's most been compared to Rodman, and obviously this guy's a little bit better of a playmaker as well, and Draymond Green.
It's a
And
great
he's been
point.
a great player for them for a while. You look at Draymond's archetype, he's right between a 3 and a 4 and a 5, and he doesn't have the size for a center, but he's not, athletic enough, quote unquote, for a 4. So he kind of has that archetype. Also taken in the second round, also a Big Ten guy. I could see him if he was able to help out TKR there and kind of use his path as a development guidance for him. That could be a good fit as well.
Yeah, the Warriors thing. I think all great points. My biggest fear is I have a scary similar guy to him that also came from Indiana that went to the Warriors and had the same kind of path. He's 6'9". He has a three and nickname. Trace Jackson Davis, TJD, Trey Kaufman-Renn, TKR, went to the Warriors. He actually kind of worked. I mean, I don't know if he was. I think he was drafted, but I think that. I mean, I think better Trace Jackson Davis. I mean, come on, Trace Jackson Davis beat Purdue a couple times, and people acted like he was one of the best players in college basketball. So, I mean, I think Warriors are a great example. I mean, I definitely think that's a great way for him to go. I think the thing with a lot of these, and with Braden, even going back to him too, is like they're definitely gonna have to get developed. I think it's a great point with the fact that when you go to a team with the Lakers or the Heat or even the Warriors, where like, they have systems that can get guys there. I think it's exactly what they kind of need. They can't go to a team. I really hope they don't go like a Nets or like some other team like that, or even not to hate, but like the Bulls. I don't know if they
But
have a
dude,
system in
I don't want
place.
them until this new front office and coaching staff, whenever we hire them, proves themselves. I don't want Braden, TKR, or Fletcher anywhere near Chicago because I do not trust us
Yeah,
at all.
yeah. I didn't know. So, do you want to go into Fletcher now? I honestly don't have. Fletcher's a weird one to me. I'm gonna let you lead for him. I don't know if you have a ton for him.
To be honest, I didn't put together a lot for Fletcher. I'm in the kind of
Okay,
the same boat there. I think maybe the Lakers would be another good one just because I
Kennard.
kind of look at him maybe in a similar role to those undrafted guys that I mentioned earlier, at least a few of them. I don't think Fletcher's going to be Austin Reeves. I don't think he has
Yeah,
that in him, unfortunately. But maybe you look at a lot of the Fletcher archetypes throughout the NBA. Luke Kennard is probably one of them, and Luke Kennard went to Duke. It was a better prospect coming out than Fletcher was, like just bar none. But Luke Kennard started in the G League and then had to work his way up to the NBA. So I think that's going to be Fletcher's path. So, and I don't even mean this disrespectfully. I think Fletcher's best fit might be the Windy City Bulls.
I
I think,
mean,
like, genuinely, I think that Fletcher needs to go there, get a little bit of practice underneath him, get a little bit of experience, and hopefully he ends up in the right system to where he can end up translating to the NBA in a role that works for him.
I'm fine to be in a Fletcher lawyer proved him wrong TikTok
Well, yeah,
compilation in the
for
future,
sure.
but I definitely feel like I just don't know if it'll translate. I don't personally see it a ton. I obviously want the most success for him, I'll be rooting for him in 3 years when he's coaching at a D2 school and he's probably leading them to the NCAA tournament, because I definitely think that's his path, and I'm excited for him to start that career whenever he feels that he is ready to start that career.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Like, even if it's not as an NBA player, Fletcher's future is going to be really great. He was a leader of the team last year. He, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's it for our player fits. We'll come back with some Big Ten updates and stuff, and then we'll see you then.
All right, so for our final segment today, we're going to be taking a look at the recently released Big Ten conference schedule for Purdue Basketball's upcoming 26-27 season. So, how we're going to do this is we're going to start with looking at our home games, then we're going to go to our home and away, and then we'll go to our away, and we're just going to read them off and maybe just get some initial reactions based on kind of how they are laid out for us. So, starting with home, we have Iowa, Maryland, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, UCLA, and USC. So from those home teams, Justin, I'm kind of curious, like, what are your initial thoughts for those games at Mackey this year?
I think the biggest thing with it to an extent is I have no idea where the Big Ten is going to be next year. I mean, if you had gone to last season and told me Nebraska was going to be a top 4 seed in the Big Ten, I would have been, what are you talking about? But if we're basing it off on last year, Iowa and Nebraska are definitely the 2 hardest ones going. I mean, USC and UCLA are always like harder teams. The good part is, since they're in California and have to come play us, we hopefully have an even bigger advantage besides playing in Mackey. I know you made a point about how big it's going to be to win at home. Is there anything you want to like elaborate on with that?
Yeah, I think that looking at this home schedule, and we'll obviously get a little bit more into the home and away teams as well when we talk about them. But I mean, yes, if you're only looking at last season's results, you would say Iowa is an Elite Eight team coming to Mackey Arena. That's going to be a tough one to win. But then you look and they've lost Bennett Sturts. They lost the guy in the portal, I believe, to Louisville. So it's really not these same teams coming in. And like you've said, the transfer portal in this era has made it to where Michigan 3 years ago was the worst team in the Big Ten. And now 2 months ago, they just won the national championship. So it's really impossible to know. I do think there's some teams on here where you kind of know they're probably not going to be very good. Maybe looking at a Maryland, looking at a Northwestern, but even Maryland at times has these random good teams. I mean, the year before this last one with the Crab
Derek
Five
Queen,
and
yeah.
Derek Queen, yeah, they were pretty good. So I don't know. I think that this will be a really big test to see. Last year, obviously, the team struggled at Mackey in ways that it really hadn't for a long time. So hopefully that edge that used to provide kind of comes back and we can take advantage of that with a truthfully kind of lighter home schedule this year.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think. All right, I'm ready to move on to the home and away.
Yeah, for sure. So home and away, we have Illinois, IU, and Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the IU one, you always know. Is these, so this is actually a genuine question. Are these always the same every year? Or is it something, is this like an annual thing that changes? I can't ever remember.
So I don't think it's like football where you have the protected rivalries, but I think you might get one. I believe we play IU home and away every single year. I know we don't Rutgers in Illinois, so I think it might just be IU. That's that protected game.
At that point, I mean, IU, they they always are gonna think they're gonna be the best team next year. So I mean, they can think if we need to win it. I think at home at least that's a guaranteed. You want to win both. That's important. Illinois is coming off a season where they had a guy who's going to go in the top 6 at least in the draft. So you have no idea what they're going to look like next year. I think it needs to be a revenge game. You can't have a guy come in and drop 40 something points and then let him win again next year at home. We at least need to win at home. Away is going to be tough. They're always kind of good. Rutgers, I mean, come on. That's got to be, if we're gonna at least go 4-2 home and away. I think 2 is really important to getting in from Rutgers.
Yeah, the Rutgers game should not be an issue. You know, we should not struggle with them at home. Maybe a little more challenging on the road, but those are 2 wins that we want to have. I think the most likely outcome, if you're just going strictly chalk, is if we lose both to Illinois, including the home game, we split with IU and we take 2 from Rutgers. We go 3-3. against those teams. Obviously, you'd like to sweep IU. You'd like to take the one at Mackey against Illinois, and I think we can. But I think even if we do kind of the maybe most likely outcome, just based on who's going to be favored before each game, I think that 3-3 from that stretch, it's good enough, especially mixed with the kind of lighter home schedule where I think we'll do really well to set us up well at the end of the season.
Yeah, I like that.
Cool. So now the more challenging games, really, kind of the opposite of last year where our home games were most of our challenging ones. So away, we have Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Oregon, Penn State, Washington, and Wisconsin.
So looking at that, I'm trying to imagine in my head going down like the ESPN schedule and seeing all the ranked teams we have ahead of us. Most likely Michigan, Michigan State, and Wisconsin are all going to be ranked. I mean, they're just all usually pretty good. Wisconsin kind of fluctuates in and out, but they'll probably be in there. And then just knowing the Big Ten, somehow Minnesota, Oregon, Washington, Penn State's going to end up being a ranked team. So it's going to be hard. I mean, tournament goes to 76 games or 76 teams. We're going to make the tournament. I'm not worried about that. But if we want to have a good seed, we're going to probably go at least, 4-3 in here, right? I mean, is that like the minimum, or do you think that we can even be a 3-4 going in this?
I think you look at last year. I mean, so much of it depends on how we perform in the non-conference. And we have some really tough non-conference games this year. We start the season, I believe, against Gonzaga. We have to go to Iowa State. I believe we play Tennessee at home, but Tennessee this year, especially in the transfer portal and some of the guys they have coming back, like they're going to be a pretty good team. So I would say if we're looking strong in the non-con, maybe we can afford to let a few of these slip. And obviously last year, we kind of talked about it in the first episode, letting it slip maybe cost us a high 2 seed and a low 1 seed. But yeah, so much of it depends on those out of conference games. So I don't know. If Valpo comes into Mackey and springs the upset, we might be in trouble. We might need to run the table in the Big Ten there.
If Valpo comes into Mackey and upsets us, we might have to end the podcast. I think we might be the omen for why this doesn't work.
Yeah, it'd be bad. I'm going to that game. I'm committing to it now.
We'll be there. We'll do a live reaction.
Oh yeah, we'll be there. And yeah, no, if we lose, then we're transitioning to washed beacons, and we're Valpo fans now, and we're big into the Missouri Valley Conference. But yeah,
we actually transition to wash to whatever team beats us each game. That's what we go.
I kind of like
wash
that.
Boilers,
it's
wash
like
Boilers, wash Hawkeyes, and then wash Boilers, wash Boilers.
washed Hoosiers.
That one actually, we just end the podcast when they beat us. We end the podcast.
Yeah. Sorry, Cool. Well, I think that was. Do you have anything else? Any other thoughts on the schedule or kind of the reveal there?
I'm ready to get an actual schedule out there. I need to see that.
Yeah, no, that's a 15-minute segment right there. I can't wait. No, going through all those games. But yeah, I think so much, like you've mentioned, is going to rely on the travel and how much that kind of comes into effect. Looking at last year, we played at UCLA on Wednesday and we had to go back and play Illinois at home. And then we had to go to Bloomington. And even before the season, people were looking at that stretch and they were like, yeah, that might be kind of a tough one on the team, while we're still doing all this West Coast stuff. So, and as it turned out, it was a kind of a tough one on us there.
It was not good for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're playing UCLA and then we're playing Rutgers in New Jersey the next game, maybe then that away game looks a little bit tougher. But until we know that, I think it's cool to reference and look at what it might be. But Purdue's probably still going to add a couple players. There's still going to be a few guys like Jeremy Fears Jr., who, if he's in the draft right now, but if he decides to come back, Michigan State is going to look even scarier, and that one becomes even harder. So a lot of unknowns right now, but glad we were able to kind of take a look at it. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Wash Boilers. Thank you guys for watching. You can find us at Wash Boilers on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and Spotify. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.